Welcome to our channel. I'm about to show you a problem that exists in many homes with oil paintings. People are using the wrong type of frame, which is actually damaging their artwork over time. The crazy part? They're paying more money for frames that make their paintings look worse and potentially cause long-term damage. Here's what I'll cover: 3 framing options, the biggest framing mistakes, and quick fixes you can do today. I'll show you 3 framing approaches and exactly when they help or hurt your painting, plus why the most popular choice is actually the worst choice you can make. If you own an oil painting, drop a comment and tell me which framing mistake you think you've made. Trust me, we're going to uncover some surprises that most people have no idea about. Let's start with the biggest money trap in oil painting frames. Many people are putting mats around their oil paintings, and for most oil on canvas pieces, matting is often unnecessary and can be the wrong choice. Some framers default to mats for everything. Ask why before you pay for one. Here's what can happen when you mat an oil painting. The canvas expands and contracts with temperature changes and humidity. That's just what canvas does. But if a mat or rigid spacer constrains a canvas that moves with humidity, you can see buckling, pressure marks, or misalignment. Ask a conservator or qualified framer about breathing and spacing for your specific work. I had a client who spent money on custom matting for a beautiful landscape painting. 6 months later, the mat was warped and the painting looked terrible. The science behind this is pretty simple. Canvas is a natural material that moves. Paper artwork doesn't move the same way, which is why mats work great for prints and watercolors. But oil paintings on canvas? They need breathing room. When you trap them behind a mat, you're basically fighting against how the material wants to behave. Look at this oil painting with a mat versus without one. The matted version looks cramped and less impactful. The unmatted version lets the painting breathe and fills the frame properly. It just looks better, right? But here's the kicker. Framing shops make a lot of money on custom mats. We're talking about markups of 200 to 400% on matting materials. So, of course, they're going to recommend them for everything. Museums commonly display oil on canvas without mats, because canvas behaves differently from paper. When they do use mounts, it's for specific conservation reasons handled by specialists. So what should you do instead? Do allow space for a canvas to breathe and avoid direct contact between mat and paint. Don't use rigid matting that touches the painted surface. Your oil painting should sit directly in the frame with proper spacing. You want about a 1/4 inch of space between the canvas edge and the frame. This gives the canvas room to expand without touching the frame. Some people call this a float mount, but really, it's just the right way to frame an oil painting. But even if you skip the mat, there's still a frame choice that most people make that's actually worse for your painting. Here's something that might surprise you. Some of the most popular framing choices for oil paintings can cause problems in certain circumstances. I see this mistake everywhere. People walk into a frame shop, see a beautiful, ornate frame with glass, and think that's what their oil painting needs. They're choosing based on how pretty the frame looks, not what's actually good for the painting. So what I see people do is put their oil painting in a standard glass frame, seal it up tight, and hang it on the wall. Seems logical, right? You want to protect your investment. But here's what can happen. That sealed glass can create moisture issues. When moisture gets trapped between the glass and the painting, temperature changes throughout the day can cause condensation on the glass. From personal experience, I've seen water-related paint damage and discoloration in sealed frames where condensation or trapped moisture persisted over time. A glazed, sealed frame can be fine with the right spacing and backing, but it becomes a problem when moisture builds up or when glazing contacts paint. Here's the thing about glazing materials. Regular glass doesn't filter UV rays. UV filtering glass or acrylic reduces UV but doesn't solve ventilation issues, and acrylic is lighter. If you glaze, ask for UV filtering glazing and spacing to prevent contact and allow air movement. For valuable works, Consult a conservator. Floating or open back frames often help ventilation and reduce the risk of trapped moisture for canvases. The painting sits in the frame, but there's air circulation around the edges. No trapped moisture, no condensation problems. Open back frames work the same way. The painting can breathe, which is what canvas wants to do naturally. But even with the right frame, people make this huge lighting mistake. Don't hang your framed oil painting in direct sun or under strong, continuous direct lighting. UV rays will fade your painting faster than anything else. Even UV filtering glass can't protect against that much direct light exposure. Museums prioritize air circulation and UV protection over making the frame look fancy. The frame might be simple, but it keeps the painting in perfect condition for decades. The thing is, most people think this kind of protection costs a fortune. Here's the good news. You can absolutely get museum-quality framing without spending thousands of dollars. I'm not going to lie, framing shops often have large markups on certain components, so you can compare prices and shop around. I found this out the hard way when I was shopping for frames for my own paintings. One shop quoted me $400 for a simple floating frame. I found similar frame molding at a supply warehouse for much less. This was just my experience, but it shows that shopping around can pay off. So which parts are actually worth spending money on? I'd recommend prioritizing solid frame construction and reliable hanging hardware. You want solid wood or high-quality metal, not particle board with a wood veneer. Good hanging hardware prevents your painting from crashing to the floor. Be judicious about spending on decorative extras that don't add protection. The mat board they try to sell you? Skip it completely for oil paintings, like we talked about. The fancy mounting systems? You don't need them. The premium frame finishes that cost extra? Your painting is the star, not the frame. Here's the measurement trick that saves people from expensive mistakes. Measure your canvas multiple times since sides can vary. Use the largest measurement and add a small allowance for fit. Most people measure once and end up with frames that are too small. Now, color coordination. Everyone gets this wrong. Prioritize a frame that complements the room and lets the painting be the focal point. Matching a single color in the painting is often less effective than choosing a frame that works with the wall and the room's style. DIY is a valid option if you have the right tools and skills. You can buy unfinished frame molding and assemble it yourself with basic tools. A miter saw, some wood glue, and corner clamps. But pre-made floating frames or local framers work great for people who prefer not to DIY. Professional installation is worth the cost for large or valuable works. Here's your cost savings checklist. Compare material costs, get 2 quotes, consider pre-made float frames, and spend on the frame structure and hanging system rather than unnecessary extras. When you make these smart choices, you're not just saving money up front. You're protecting your investment for years to come. A proper frame and glazing strategy reduces risk from UV, moisture, and accidents, but the right approach depends on the painting and its environment. Here's your quick checklist. Check if your oil paintings are matted unnecessarily. Look for ventilation at the edges. Make sure they're not in direct sun. Consider UV filtering glazing for light-exposed pieces. Most people are making at least one of these mistakes. Drop a comment and tell me one framing mistake you want help with, or describe your setup if you want feedback. Hit that like button if these tips were useful, and subscribe for more art care advice. For high-value or historic works, consult a conservator or trusted framer. The good news is, anyone can make smart framing choices with the right knowledge.